you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is always such a great event because we all get to stand around and talk about the newest things that are happening. There's hardly any punches held. There's always a great conversation, and I know a lot of us vendors are kind of looking at what's happening in the industry. So I was very honored to be able to come up here and talk to you about something that a lot of people have been talking about for a long time, but hasn't really been real, and that is putting multiple operator small cells simultaneously into the same building in a real-world setting. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the subject of my case study and the pilot site that we're going to be talking about is hotels. So hotels end up being kind of the poster child for mid-sized properties that honestly don't get a lot of attention from the wireless operator community. And the hotel industry, I would say they feel a little slighted by that or frustrated. I'm not sure what might be the best word to use for it, but the hotel industry has had great success with DAS if they've got 1,000+ rooms, if they have a large convention space, if they're in a Super Bowl city, then there's attention paid to them. But the hotel industry is quick to talk about occasions where they've put DAS in and had maybe one operator show up. There's multiple cases in the hotel industry where a DAS was an investment in a DAS and there was no operators that showed up. And the industry talks a lot about that. I was in Orlando last week for 3 days at a hotel industry show. And even though everybody in this room agrees that the DAS lives, this whole DAS is dead thing is ridiculous, the hotel industry has got kind of a bad taste in their mouth for it. And one of the reasons is because not all needs are the same in a hotel. And this case study I'm going to take you through is kind of representative of that. So the project we picked to work on is a property called Shepherd's Beach Resort in Clearwater, Florida. And this is a real destination hotel, and you can see from some of the pictures that popped up, there's a lot of people that come to this hotel. It's a real destination for 20s, 30s crowd. Out there on the water side, you can see that hut there is actually a stage, and they have name bands that come to that stage. They also have a nightclub. And the thing about Shepherd's is there is a very large amount of day guests. And so there's really no usage of the Wi-Fi network by these day guests. You have to have a room number and a last name and all the things that you take to log into the Wi-Fi. So the usage is very heavily based on people that are coming in just for the day. So Wi-Fi does not serve their purposes whatsoever. They really needed cellular. So beachfront property is fairly classic, especially a Florida beachfront property that has to have hurricane requirements, and why it's so difficult to create coverage, because really everything interesting about that hotel is on the beach side, and there's obviously no macro out in the water. And in this particular hotel, again, like a lot of designs, they've built a concrete parking lot in front of the hotel all across the front side. So it's an RF nightmare. So all the interesting stuff is on the beach side. The bars, the restaurants, even the convention space has windows that looks out over the water and all blocked by the parking garage. So in parts of this building, there was literally absolutely no coverage. The walk test meters wouldn't even register. So one of the things we have to do is kind of sort out which properties are really candidates for this and which ones are interesting. What we do as a company is we also analyze RF and RF traffic. So this is a picture of a rolled up traffic analysis that we do using a wide variety of social media feeds. And this is a heat map of Clearwater Beach. And the resolution is not very good on these slides, I realize, but you can see the hot spots and the not so hot spots and the not interesting spots at all in the color coding where red is the hottest. And I've zoomed in here on where the Shepherd's Beach Resort is, and you can literally see where people are using their phones out in the water, around that stage area. At kind of 3 o'clock in the Zoom, or well, for you it's, 9 o'clock in the zoomed in area. That's their nightclub. It's a 2-story nightclub. It packs out during the weekends, during the night. You can see that area of the building's hot. And then out toward the front where the garages are, it's all valet parking, so nobody uses their phone in the garage. So what we do at ClearSky is roll up both the equipment and the wireless operator relationships to be able to put these in-building systems in. And that's a trick in itself, of course. Part of it's technology, but part of it's the operator relationships to be able to do this in a coherent fashion. So from an equipment perspective, the small cell world is, you can't really bring your own small cell, so it has to be approved by the wireless operator. So when we look at a project, and in anything we do, really anybody that's doing anything in this room, we know that we're going to have to use the wireless operator's approved RF devices. So for us, when we look at a property, probably similar to you, in the small cell world though, if I feel kind of like the old Mission Impossible where I got all the, I'm Peter Graves, I'm going through all the pictures of the people I want to use in my project. It's kind of the same thing with this set of equipment. You pick the equipment that makes the most sense for the property and which operators do they want covered. But we wanted to go full Monty on this project, so this is a full 4-operator deployment. So the way we do it is we use mobile edge computing capabilities and put a lot of intelligence at the edge of the hotel itself and then roll up all the equipment inside the hotel. So as this diagram shows, the in-building network is Cat5 Ethernet, and then we run some software on top of that Cat5 Ethernet to manage all the individual small cells inside the building. And then coming out of that building through public internet over VPN, we interconnect into the operators, and then behind the scenes, we collect information off that mobile edge computing device to be able to track and maintain what's going on inside the building. So in the past, when everybody has seen this kind of diagram, so I'll just address the issue right away, is it doesn't make sense to a lot of people to have 4 sets of small cells inside a building. And I've heard that over and over and over again. But the reality is it's actually, there's a couple things that make that possible, not even possible, but in some cases desirable. So first of all, the backbone is all the same, and it's all Cat5. So in these kind of properties, there's already Wi-Fi. There's a lot of Cat5 capability. There's room in the risers for additional Cat5, because most of these hotels have been designed for a little bit of a future-proof anyway. So adding the Cat5 for these small cells is not a big deal. The other aspect is that small cells are scalable, and all the property space inside the hotel industry, as a for instance, is not really created equal. So this particular property, for instance, literally the general manager says, I don't want anybody in the rooms. I want everybody down at my bar. I want everybody down at my pool. I want them spending money. So I'm really not motivated to create coverage up in the guest rooms, but I need all the common space. I want that the best it can possibly be. I need convention space and certain class of rooms. I want coverage, but the rest I don't. And that is one huge advantage of small cells. You can pick and choose what coverage you want, and also as a hotelier, you can pick and choose which set of operators you want. So there's a lot of people that ask, so is really just AT&T and Verizon enough? And in some cases it is, but the numbers are really easy to walk around with. If you think about AT&T and Verizon both having about 100 million, and Sprint and T-Mo each having about 50. So it's kind of a third, and then you combine T-Mobile and Sprint, and that's the other third of the market. So depending on what your clientele is, if you're a business hotel, AT&T and Verizon is probably sufficient. But if you're a hotel that attracts a younger crowd, like this one, there's a high proliferation of Sprint and T-Mobile users in that mix. So in this kind of property, 4 operators does make sense. So I thought I'd give you take you on a little search for the small cell to kind of illustrate my point that these things go in pretty easy and not very visible. So here's a site outside on the edge of one of the pool bars, and the small cell is probably really hard to see, so I've highlighted it for you. So these are the kind of installations that you have to pay attention to. So obviously, their nice wood ceiling there is a candidate, but if you don't need to use it, we don't use it. Here's a better example. So a typical hallway. So where's the small cells? Well, I'll tell you which ones aren't small cells. One's a Wi-Fi access point. The other one's a smoke detector. The two that are small cells in this particular picture are those ones. So in these kind of settings, there's a lot of stuff bristling from the ceiling, and visually, us as guests, and even the hotel management, kind of don't even consciously see it. So the fact that there are units hanging from the ceiling is not really that big a deal, and it's very doable. But in most cases, we really did that install just so we'd have something to show. In most instances, they look like that. So there's enough power to put them above the grid ceilings. And this is kind of a typical install. You can see that metal rack that loops over the 2-foot span of the grid ceiling. So that just pops in. There's that single blue Cat5 cable going to the device. That's the power and the signal in a single unit. And fundamentally, the devices just disappear literally into the woodwork in this case. So the fact that you might need to put 4 in an area approximately 20 feet or 30 feet of hall space is pretty meaningless because you don't even see it. And running that extra Cat5, you got the ceiling grid open anyway. To drag the Cat5 is really very straightforward. The other thing is that the mobile edge computing devices and the building level controllers are very compact. They're just standard 110 power. This is just used a little bit of existing rack space. That's the entire rack space for the building, which is a little bit over 100,000 square feet of coverage for the entire small cell install. And then that all shares the same internet backhaul, so everybody is using VPN, all 4 operators. I'm a member of a hotel body called HTNG. It's called the Hotel Technology. So if you're familiar with like the Small Cell Association or other associations that write standards for the industry, that's what HTNG is for the hotel industry. And the HTNG just finished publication of standards for indoor cellular coverage. And it consists of really 2 categories. One is DAS, because DAS is certainly alive and well, but the other now category that's been officially adopted by the hotel industry is multi-operator small cell. And if you read this kind of intro paragraph from the small cell regarding cellular coverage from the HTNG folks, you'll see that they're really concerned about their properties. And what they mean by properties of all sizes is exactly that. If a property needs 50,000 square feet of coverage, they might really, really need it, because that might be the convention space that either attracts a 200, 300 person convention like this at a hotel for 3 or 4 days. That's worth $100, $150, $200,000 to that hotel. The ability to continue to attract that group year after year is very, very important. It's one of the strongest justification cases for indoor cellular in the hotel industry, especially these mid-sized business hotels. And to kind of wrap up, as far as pluses and minuses for the small cell, lacking from this list is the fact that you have to put 4 systems in. I really think that's way over dramatized, and it's really not a big deal. So one of the pluses, though, is that it is extremely scalable. And in this process, we worked with all 4 operators to create a deployment process that can be scaled across the country. On the minus side, there's still regional RF teams that have to be involved with each of the 4 operators, because you have to set up the roaming tables and the neighbor lists and do the testing for E911. And so the local teams are very involved. And so even if a national group blesses the general concept of small cells, it still requires buy-in and cooperation from the regional teams. And that can be fast, slow, or in between. So there's still plenty of work to be done, but certainly this small cell approach is real, and it really, really does work. So with that, I will turn it over to our next speaker. Thank you very much.